Hello, everybody, and welcome to the weekly Weebcast, which is going to be going weekly now.
2 whole weeks in a row. It's a miracle.
2 whole weeks in a row. There may even be a bonus Weebcast. We're not 100% sure yet, but we sure do want to talk about a certain visual novel that you may have seen us stream recently. We are going to be talking about Silent Voice, or Koi no Katachi, today, the new KyoAni film. I mean, new, it was a year ago, but it's new to us.
New to us, poor people.
In North America. And we're joined today by a very special guest who's got experience with the subject matter of the film and also pretty good taste in anime. Gaijin Goombah.
How you doing, everyone?
Glad to have you aboard, man. We're doing fine. And we're
no one asked, but we're doing fine.
Yeah, we're doing fine. I mean, he said, "How are you doing, everybody?" And I figured I'd respond for the audience.
Wow, that's pretentious.
It's presumptuous of me. Maybe they're having a really crappy day.
In which case, I mean, you know what? Deal with it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're having a crappy day today and you've seen this movie, you know it can be a lot worse. So.
True.
Quick summary. A Silent Voice is a movie about bullying and its after effects, and about a kid who used to be a bully, specifically a bully of a deaf girl, trying to make good and be a less crappy person. It's really sad, really emotional, very KyoAni. It's
real pretty too.
Yeah, that's what I meant by very KyoAni.
Just in case people don't know what you're talking about.
And
it's very pretty.
And we've got a couple interesting perspectives on this, because Yazi was a student in Japan for a year.
Yes.
And Goombah was a teacher in Japan. Mm-hmm. So he's seen this from the teacher's perspective, and she's seen this from the high school student's perspective. And, specifically as a foreigner in Japan, which is... I mean...
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about that part later. But.
Yeah, right now we're just going to talk about our initial impressions of the movie, going around in a circle. And let's start with you, Goombah. What'd you think of the movie overall?
It was interesting, because it's like everyone has always said that this movie is based on a kid who bullies and is instead a kid who gets bullied back. I think that's only a very small part of it. I think it also has a lot to do with what it means to have this kind of group ethic, and what happens when you kind of throw that all into a big old blender and create a big old problem. There are talks of there's a lot of addressing of suicide that not a lot of people have talked about. There is even, I would argue, there's even a few aspects of hikikomori culture going on here, though not necessarily for the same reason that we would see in typical media, i.e., I'm shutting out the world because the fake world is better. This is, I'm shutting out the world because the world has already shut me out, and it's just too painful to try and keep an ear out. So, in my opinion, it goes far and beyond just like simple bullying. I think that, in my opinion, that only really makes up about 1/5 of the movie. The rest of it is, how does that affect the people around you? Specifically, how does that affect people around you in Japan, because it's a completely different context than it is in the West.
Yes.
as well as just freaking figuring yourself out. There's a lot of that as well with all the different characters.
Mm-hmm. I specifically speaking to the hikikomori thing, structurally, it reminds me a little bit of Anohana, which is one of my favorite shows from a few years ago. Which is, it's different in the context. It's about a group of friends who stopped being friends because a little girl who they all played with died. And the main character does become a hikikomori and sort of shut himself off from the world. And it's about them reconnecting. And this is kind of similar in the structure that the main character has sort of shut himself off. Although Anohana didn't get to quite the point of suicide. But it's an interesting perspective for a coming of age story specifically, and something that I don't think we see a lot in media, even though it's and in anime even though it's something that's very relevant to Japanese culture is this this idea of somebody shutting themselves off from the group because they can't handle the obligations and because they feel some kind of guilt or responsibility for something that they've done, and feeling like they're unworthy of other people's affection and time and stuff, and that in A Silent Voice, it's even more pronounced how painful that experience is, and how cut off from everybody else Shoya is. I especially how they emphasize it with the X's over everybody's faces, and there's some great bits of animation with that. But yeah, the maybe you guys can speak a little bit more to the broader societal context of that.
Yeah, just a quick question, Mr. Goombah. Have you read the manga at all?
I have not.
Okay, just wondering. So I have read the manga. Jeff, you have, right?
I've read about part of it, yeah.
Yeah, so both of us have read.
Doesn't it have a couple of different plot points than the movie does?
Yes, so there's a whole subplot that's weirdly not in this, because it's like the most filmic subplot ever, that they're trying to make a movie.
Right.
Like a first amateur film project. And that's the kind of thing that most filmmakers would love to toss into an adaptation of something, because it's exactly that kind of like masturbatory isn't filmmaking great thing, but that's left out, and there's whole stretches of their lives that are gone. There's this character called Pedro who's great, who's so even in the manga, Shoya's little sister or older sister is never shown, but her husband does show up
A lot.
and her husband's this guy from America called Pedro.
Is he from America?
He's from either America or South America, but he's like
I'm pretty sure he's from South America.
yeah, he's super duper tan and
super muscular. Super muscular.
yeah, he's super muscular, and you only see him like once in the whole movie, in the opening credits, where Shoya walks in on him and he's just flexing, and it kind of looks like he's looking across the way, but that's actually his sister's room, which is behind a curtain.
Anyway.
But yeah, there's lots of stuff that has been taken out to make this work, because it's the whole manga that they've adapted, not just a few seconds, or like not just a few chapters, you know?
So I think that a big fault of the movie, though, was that the manga covers too much. And the movie, because it was a movie, didn't really have time for that. And like Goombah said, there's that whole other kind of plot about shutting yourself off, and they didn't really have time to make that feel as emotional, because they're trying to balance bullying and the like shutting yourself out and all of these things at once. And I don't know, I feel like while they got to touch on all of them, the manga really like makes them all feel important, whereas I feel like the movie really emphasizes just the bullying part of it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I really feel like that's all people took out of it.
And that was kind of my chief complaint about people's synopsis with the movie that I just got done talking about, is every review that I've seen is like, oh, it's about bullying. I'm like, no, it's really not, actually. It's a lot more about the message that I got out of it was a whole lot of, like I said, Japanese group ethic and what happens when someone is causing problems. And on the flip side of that, it's what is it like to be in that society when you feel like a burden? In a society that is so group structured on everyone doing the job that they need to do, and then you have this other dude way over here who already has a bad rap, but is actively shutting people out and not really making an effort to put himself into something. So that was actually... That was the weird thing that I experienced when I was actually watching the movie, because it was like, I thought this was about bullying, and it was for the first half hour or so, but after that it just kind of fell by the wayside.
Yeah, so I feel like, and not like knocking the movie at all, it's a great movie, I was just a little bit upset that they didn't have the time. Not like disappointed, but like, oh man, that not everybody was able to catch on to that because they just didn't have enough of it in the movie, I feel like.
Well, I think the bigger problem is that, like, even the bullying is a sort of extension of that theme of what it is to be a burden to society. Because the reason that they initially bully Shoko is because her deafness makes her a burden to the rest of the class. She is... like, she makes it more difficult for them to get through lessons. It's difficult to talk to her. She is a burden in a sense, and
It's not her fault she's a burden, but she is still a burden.
And that's why Shoya initially bullies her, and the other girls and everybody else initially bullies her, and that's why Shoya ends up getting bullied, because once he's caught, he becomes a burden to the rest of that social group, and the roles are sort of flipped. So this idea of these characters, the characters are ostracized and rejected, not necessarily because they're weird or goofy or different, which is sort of the American context for bullying, but because they're seen as not contributing, and they're seen as like being useless, and both of them kind of internalize that, and they start blaming themselves for how they're being treated. And in Shoya's case, it's kind of deserved, because it's his own behavior that led him to that position. But in Shoko's case, she just feels that way because she sees her sister suffering, and she sees her mother suffering, she sees her grandmother suffering, just to accommodate her disability, and the pressure that puts on her makes her feel like she just has to apologize and smile at everybody, because being as pleasant and inobtrusive and helpful as possible is the only way that she can think of to lessen the burden that she's putting on everybody else.
Well, something else to think about too. All this starts when they're in the 6th grade. Kids are terrible.
Oh my god!
Like,
yeah.
kids are naturally. I honestly don't care. I will be completely blunt. Kids that young are absolute monsters to each other.
Oh yeah.
If there is any singular imperfection going on, other kids will make kids pay for it in spades.
And it's funny because it's not a cultural thing either. That specifically is like a worldwide thing. All kids at that age.
Oh yeah. And I would argue that that's not even a kid's thing. I think as we get older, we just understand that that's not something that we can do as openly as we used to when we were kids. Because when you're kids, it's like, oh, you're a kid, you're expected to act like an idiot. And when you're adult, it's like, well, you still... I know plenty of adults that would still harass people like that. They would just make sure to do it behind closed doors, and
or in the context of like a political disagreement or something like that, where they can be justified in getting really mad and making somebody feel like crap.
Right. And that's something that, for all the good that I say about Japan, there are a lot that I think is very problematic with the country. And I think one of those things is the fact that people act like they can do what they want so long as they get away with it. I've seen it happen many times. Sometimes in my case, simply because I was a foreigner, people were able to get away with doing really terrible things simply because of the context of who I was and the situation that I was in.
Yeah, and that brings up like an interesting thing, because it's kind of the problem is in Japanese culture, it is avoided to say no to people and to confront them and to put yourself in an awkward situation and to put someone else in an awkward situation. It is like heavily avoided to bring forth an awkward situation on someone else, which is what comes with speaking up or confronting someone or saying that that's not okay. So it kind of feeds into itself, where you would have things happen to you, and while I'm sure there was someone who was like, that's not right, they don't want to be the one who becomes the burden, so they don't say anything. And that trickles up, in a Silent Voices case, it trickles up all the way to the teachers. who watch him get bullied, and they don't want to.
And her get bullied.
Yes,
too.
they watch her get bullied first, but then they're watching him also get bullied, and they're just watching it happen. But they don't want to be the burden who puts the kids or puts the parents in the awkward situation, so they don't say anything either. In it, it's.
Well, there's a couple of other legal things behind that as well.
Yeah.
But we can get to that when we get into the more the more personal perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I will, connecting to that in the manga, there's actually like a scene where the teacher sits down with Shoya and he's like, look, this is like, he's basically like, look, I'm not going to say don't do this, but don't cause problems for me. That's the whole context in which he's saying don't bully this girl. He's like, you can. He essentially says you can do this as long as it doesn't come back to me.
Yeah, so he's basically saying stop making me contact with this girl's mom.
Yeah.
Instead of saying stop treating her badly, he's saying stop putting me in a situation where I have to call her mom.
Yeah. And Shoya takes that as like permission to just keep doing what he's doing. Let's talk a little bit more about how the film is constructed, I guess, before we get into the nitty-gritty cultural details and our personal takes on it. It's a very beautiful movie. I think that kind of goes without saying. It was up against Your Name at the Japan Animator Awards. I think that's what... So it was up against Your Name, and while it didn't win Best Director, that went to Your Name's director Makoto Shinkai. It did win Best Animation at those awards, which is pretty. That's a pretty big deal.
That's a big deal, especially up against Your Name.
Yeah, and while I don't think the backgrounds in this are necessarily as pretty as those in Your Name, the character animations in it are like incredible. I mean, it's Kyoto Animation, so they always do a really, really good job with making characters come to life. But the little things, like how when he's a kid, Shoya's got that like pronounced swagger whenever he walks around, and Shoko's got sort of her shoulders withdrawn all the time, and she's very quiet. There's lots of little details in the animation that just make the world and characters of this movie come alive. The music is pretty damn incredible across the board. I love that they used the Who song for the opening. You know, you don't see that a lot, and the little details, like the effect of the X's over everybody's faces peeling off, or in the sound design, how the sound gets a little bit muted whenever you're seeing things from Shoko's perspective.
Yeah, I'd be really interested to see this movie just for the sound alone in theaters.
We saw a press screener. And
yeah, sorry, we didn't get to see it in theaters because it's not out in Canada yet.
Yeah, it'll be out like next week, I think.
So I am looking forward to seeing it to have that like effect, because I've heard that, and I think I noticed too a little bit while you're watching.
Yeah, I mean, we have a surround sound setup at home,
but
so
I mean, it's no movie theater setup.
Yeah, I mean, more to the point, it was the press screener, I think, was stereo mastered.
Oh yeah.
So,
womp womp.
Yeah, it's just a beautiful movie.
I think it's interesting because the takeaway that I got was that Your Name did a really good job at setting up atmosphere, and Silent Voice. I think the reason why Silent Voice, like Jeff, you said that the backgrounds were they weren't terrible, but there was a lot more pronunciation on the characters. And I think that's because while Your Name on the cover is a love story, I think a lot of the emphasis involves the mystique that the movie presents and the atmosphere considering what the story is actually involving. Because while it does involve people, I would argue, like, there's one relationship going on, but it's a relationship where no one can actually meet each other until the very end. So it's hard to build, in my opinion, it was hard to build up that kind of personal connection. Whereas in Silent Voice, that connection was established from the beginning. starting off as something rough, and then becoming something more tender. It was a focus on people and families, and how they all affected each other, where Your Name had this very supernatural presence to it, where everything that was key in that movie had to be atmospherical, whether it came to the pseudo-magic, things falling from the sky, the pull back, like, a lot of the emotion that you got, that the characters were feeling, came from the surroundings that they were in, whereas Silent Voice is very, very much about the inward-focused person.
Yeah. Your Name is also concerned with the culture around it and the religious aspects of that story, and it's more a fantasy story, I would say, like a contemporary fantasy story, than it is necessarily a straight romance, whereas A Silent Voice is very much about how people deal with other people, and interpersonal relationships. So they're very different movies, even though they get compared a lot. I was actually thinking of doing a video about Your Name versus A Silent Voice, but I ended up deciding against it because they really fill totally different roles, and A Silent Voice is more down to earth in what it's about, so to speak, whereas Your Name is about drawing the emotion out of the setting. Your Name is almost a tourism video for Japan.
Yeah.
And they made the same team behind it made a tourism video for Canada just recently. But yeah, I would say that A Silent Voice, its directorial decisions do reflect what its story is about.
I definitely think it deserved the award. I absolutely think it deserved the award.
Yeah, I do too. There are going back to the manga. There are some other differences that just came to mind. Mainly that Shoya is a lot meaner in the manga.
I think in the manga in general, there's just a lot more emotion.
Yeah,
That's partially because you get to see things. From
you get inner monologues and
yeah,
stuff.
First of all, there's narration in it, but also it's just, I feel like you have more time in the manga to connect with them and start to feel really bad, which is, no fault of the movie. They were on a time limit. They had a lot of content to get through, but yeah, there's Shoyo is a bit of a different boy. I think in the manga he's a worse boy, which means that his whole redemption thing when he's older hits a little harder, and it's a little like, to find out that he's in high school and having a terrible time hits a little harder because he was having a great time before, and a lot of people can relate to that, and maybe they're looking back now. Hopefully, if we're lucky, there are some people who look back and go, oh wow, maybe I was also not the nicest kid. That would be nice.
Didn't get punished for it.
Yeah.
The movie also covers like a lot of different ground in its runtime. Going from them sort of starting their relationship in the early days of the school year into summer festivals and other just big events in their lives. Like they go from a summer festival to a school festival. So it covers a lot of ground very quickly. I think that when you watch it, you can tell that it's a condensed adaptation.
Yeah, I think it would have been really, really enjoyable as a series.
The bullying actually felt like, the bullying didn't feel like it had a lot of impact because it happened so rapidly.
Yeah,
like you could tell.
Sorry, go ahead.
You could tell that the movie was trying to push itself along really quick, because it was one terrible thing after another, and it's like, can we hold on this a little bit, because this was kind of a really big step. And so much is talked about in flashback, which is fine for a lot of movies, but for this one, it's like, I would like to see this kind of progressive. Instead of getting a little Quentin Tarantino on here and just being like, flashback here, now we move forward, flashback, move forward, and it's just, I don't know, I feel like it hurts the narrative a little bit.
Yeah, that's why I would have, I think, enjoyed to see it a little more fleshed out as a series. Would it have been as good? I don't know. But I would have been interested to see, like, actually a couple hours just dedicated to them when they're younger. instead of half of the movie split between the two ages. I would have liked to see a full 2 hours of just getting attached to them when they're younger. You know?
It's a quarter of the movie that's them when they're younger.
That's what I mean. That's not enough. Whereas in the manga, I'm like, again, it's been a while since I read it. I read it a couple years ago. But I think about half of the manga is them when they're kids.
No, it's the first 2 volumes, I think.
That's still pretty long, though.
Yeah.
2 full volumes is like, it's not 2 chapters. It's 2 full...
Might be one. Yeah, anyway, the thing with Shoya in the manga is that he's they dive into his motivations more, and they don't have the time to do this in the movie, but in the manga, like, he talks about seeing her as an alien invader, and he's trying to stave off boredom for himself by picking on her, basically.
Because, see, that was the thing, is that in the movie, I got this vibe from him that he's bullying her because he just purely doesn't know how to handle the situation. Like, it's something so different. Because, I mean, when you're in the 6th grade, you don't know how to handle people with special needs and whatnot, because you've only known yourself and your friends, and if you're like any regular kid, you've probably already made it a point not to hang out with anyone with any kind of disabilities unless you're a Gold Star student, and if you are, bravo to you, good sir or ma'am. But it was weird because the vibe that I got from Shoya was that he was doing these things because he just couldn't handle it. Like, he was picking on her because she was differently abled, and he just couldn't cope with that. But I don't know, like, it just sounds like he was doing it for semi-lulz in the manga, just because he was either bored or just because he was a jerk kid.
He contextualized her as like an alien invader who was out to ruin their lives.
Yeah, which like kind of adds a bit, I think.
It does.
It almost adds a bit of justification. Not that it's correct justification, but it lets you like kind of be like, oh, that's what
it makes
thinking.
Sense.
Yeah, like, not that it's right, but it's like, oh, okay, that's what's causing this. Versus in the movie, it just kind of feels like he's just mean. He's just doing it to be mean. Whereas when you have the justification of, oh, she's here to ruin our lives, she's here to cause a problem and stuff, it's like, oh, okay. I mean, not okay, but
well, it's can I shift gears ever so slightly?
Yeah, of course.
That whole idea, in my opinion, based on the, I don't know, 15 years at this point of cultural study, that is where you get into you're burdening the group kind of thing. But this is taken to the extreme, because there's 2 ways from my experience living there are 2 ways people look at not just disability but problems in the group. They either, one, feel that they need to exercise the problem because what is one person or one thing versus the entire group, or we need to all collectively come together and fix the problem because this person is part of us and we need to help them. And the latter is what I actually see more of, despite what some people may think about the country or how it operates, particularly in the school system. By and large, I see when people think group mentality, they're like, oh, well, everyone has to be the same. And it's like, no, everyone just takes care of each other. And just to throw a little logic into that, one of the reasons why, in my opinion, that's been around for so long is that Japan has been such an agricultural country for a really long time. Let me just put it that way. And when 75 to 80% of your landmass is mountainous and completely unarable, it's kind of important that everyone comes together and does everything they can to make sure everyone is still around and alive and being fed and all these other things. So I think there's a lot of logic to it. It's just something that's been weirdly evolving as we've come to this more modern era. But I think a lot of the movie... I think the movie balances kind of those 2 things out from different perspectives, such as, I am a burden on everyone, therefore I am problematic, or you are a burden to me, therefore you are problematic and I'm going to make you suffer for it, versus the turnaround of, we're all together and we kind of need to figure this out and harmonize with each other. So
my experience jumping into that with bullying in Japan is a little different, but also I guess a little bit the same. I did not experience it. I mean, of course I experienced it, but to the extreme. I was living with a host family whose young daughter, she's half American. She's got an American last name. She looked, I would say she looked very Japanese. She was born and raised in Japan by a Japanese family, like a very traditional family. But at school, because of her last name, there was no hiding it. And she was like tormented for it.
Oh, yeah.
To the point of she used to ask me to come pick her up from school so that they could see how cool I was, so that they would stop making fun of her for being American. I'm Canadian, but they would just say American. So she would say, like, can you come pick me up from school so they can see that I have a cool American sister and that it's not a bad thing to have an American last name. And my host mom wrote a letter to the teachers first before she went in. She tried writing a letter to the school to let them know that she was coming home crying, saying that people were calling her names, and the teachers said there was nothing they could do about it. And she went in to talk to the school, and the school told her that it's part of being a kid. And because they didn't want to be, they didn't want to be the ones to say, we need to call all of these parents, we need to do something. They saw it as it's part of being a kid, and someone's going to be bullied. So just let it happen.
I hate that so much.
And that's my experience with this was she wasn't really a burden per se to the kids, but she was a burden to the adults, and that's why they didn't do anything about it. Her teacher saw it as it's supposed to happen, and by complaining about it, you are causing a burden. So just stop causing a problem and let it happen.
But it's just so lazy.
I know.
Even from I'm sorry, I'm getting fired up really hardcore right now. No, this is what irks me because, and I'll put it in their own context, is that when you're causing, oh my god, I'm having like 5 things hit me at the same time because there's also the legal issue going on here. I've actually talked to teachers about that, and it irritates me and it irritates them because, going back to what I said before, they're still a part of the group. And not only is that causing issues for group cohesion, but it's creating distraction in the classroom. And again, like I said before, Japan will break down problems with the group in one of 2 categories, one of which, in your host sister's case, would be the case of removing them from the school because they're creating a problem, even though they've literally done nothing. Yeah. Or... And this is what I saw in my school, is just straight up punishing the kid for screwing up. The severity of those punishments are kind of different, just because of how the Constitution governs what kids are mandated to have in terms of education. We can get into that later. But it's that story irritates me, not from an American perspective, but like from a Japanese perspective as a teacher, because I could only imagine like how much of an issue it's causing the teachers trying to teach.
So they didn't want to go out of the way and do what they would see as a favor, putting themselves in an awkward situation for someone who is causing a problem to them. And maybe it was the same in the movie, where it's causing a problem in the classroom. So just let it happen and let the kids get it out.
Yeah. Sorry, I just want to intercut very quickly. In the manga, they do sort of expand on the idea that her needing to talk to her in sign language is a huge burden for the teachers. And while the male teacher is initially like super gung-ho about integrating her into the classroom and getting everybody on board and liking her, by the end of like a few chapters, he's like, I'm just fucking sick of this. Do whatever you want.
Yeah, like he watches them rip her things out, and he's like, stop horsing around.
Yeah. But you've gotta understand something. Teachers constitutionally can do nothing. This was the utter... I wanted to kill someone because of this problem. I'm serious. You cannot, by law, throw kids out of a classroom. You can't. It doesn't matter how much of a problem they're creating. It doesn't matter how loud they are. It doesn't matter how big of a distraction they're creating, which is hilarious because they're literally denying education for the 99% of the other kids in the room. You cannot throw a problem child out unless
Yeah,
they're like causing physical harm to someone, and even then it's kind of like whatever. Like, case in point, my Sensei kids, my third year kids, I absolutely hated them. I hated them with so much fiery passion. Not, for context, I taught in high school, and if you thought senioritis was bad here, senioritis over there is wretched.
Yeah.
Because you literally have to teach over kids. I was told you had to teach over kids. That is an impossibility to make education happen.
I actually, when I went to Japan for high school, I was supposed to be in that year, and they put me a year younger with kids younger than me because they didn't think I would learn anything. They didn't think it would be beneficial to my education to be with the third years, just because it's like that. Mm-hmm. And they were like, oh, well, they're all in their own thing, and they're kind of just taking care of university this year, so... Which is code for exactly that. They're so freaking senioritis that... Yeah.
It's just, it's so irritating because their entire educational system revolves around tests, and tests don't prove anything. Mm-hmm. I mean, can we all come to that consensus in this day and age that a standardized test is not a good judge of character, it's not a good judge of critical thinking or problem-solving skills or anything to that nature?
You are preaching to the choir.
It's only a test of how good you are at taking tests.
Yeah, it's a test of how good you are at memorization.
Mm-hmm. And that's awful. And that's also the basis for getting into those universities, which determines their working lives, even though, again, that has nothing to do with any of the practical skills that they need.
But do you understand why they do that?
To some extent. Do you want to explain it for the audience?
Yes.
That's
so
code for
basically,
Jeff.
Basically,
no, that was code for please explain it to me. Jeff just didn't want to say it.
The reason why that it's set up like that is kids in college, and I went to college in Japan, and I can attest to this. Kids don't learn anything in college. They don't. Mm-hmm. College, if you seriously, if you thought college was a waste of time here in the States, you've seen nothing until you get over there and watch what the kids do, because they don't really do anything. Now, granted, if you go to Tokyo U, yeah, you're going to be doing stuff, because that's freaking Tokyo U. But if you're going to a smaller side college, it doesn't matter. All that matters is that you got there, and the reason why they're so test-oriented is that every ounce of understanding of your future job, which theoretically speaking you're supposed to be working for the rest of your life, is taught to you by the company. You don't even technically need that education. What you need to prove is that you're good clay. If you're good enough clay, you're easy to mold. But if you're hard, rough clay with terrible, terrible grades, you're not very easily moldable. Therefore, you're not going to make a good employee. Because as soon as you graduate college and as soon as you get in your job, you're spending 2 weeks to a month in a training camp. And it's a literal camp where it's you getting shipped off to some kind of company location with other employees. And you are drilled to the bone of what you're supposed to be doing for, like I said, the next 2 weeks to a month. And it kind of sucks. And then from there, that's when you jump in and get jobs, or you start your job. So, you could easily argue that once the compulsory education is done, no further education is required because you don't learn anything from it. Not really. Mm-hmm. It's ideally the same up through high school here, where it's like we want to get you exposed to as much stuff as we can to make you a good, well-rounded person. And then in college, theoretically, is when you're supposed to specialize. Now, in my college, they didn't really give me that kind of option, but that's neither here nor there. But for Japan, it's just, you better come out as good clay. If you come out as good clay, a good company's going to mold you, and you're going to be relatively successful. And if not, well, have fun.
Yeah, that's something that I didn't understand as well a year ago. Or so, whenever New Game came out, because this is just going back to a previous Weebcast argument, but when New Game came out, that's a very Japanese take on how the game industry works, and as somebody who has worked adjacent to and in the game industry in America, the fact that somebody was hired onto the art team out of high school and trained on the software there was like, that doesn't make any sense. But I got pretty
Would you say
But
that maybe you were wrong?
I would say that maybe I was a little bit wrong about corporate culture.
Get a little closer to the
Japan.
microphone. A little closer to the microphone.
Jeff, the anime pope, was wrong about things.
That was actually something I wanted to talk about, like in a video. Actually, did I? I think I made a reference to it a long time ago with New Game, the whole fresh out of high school working in a company kind of thing. But even in that anime, to your credit, they said I can't remember character names, but the lead staff lady, she herself said, Nazarashi, like it was rare for a kid to get that kind of job straight out of high school. I would argue it kind of depends on where you're at, because in my high school that I predominantly taught at was out in the Inaki, it was out way in the countryside, and the teachers were actually the ones responsible for finding kids jobs, which was hilarious to me. But a lot of them did get jobs right out of high school. Only about half of them went to college there. But in a more densely packed area like Tokyo, Yokohama, I would argue even places like Kyoto, maybe Kobe, places like that, kids are going to be going off to college just because it's kind of the next step thing to do. But no, it is entirely possible to get working at 18 right out of college.
Just a quick, completely off-topic question, but where were you when you were in Japan?
I was teaching in Mie Prefecture. It is where I lived was called Komonocho. It was 20 minutes away from Yokkaichi, which was the next biggest city, and then from there I was about 45 minutes away. If you go to Nagoya, you see that there's like a water mass to the left. If you circle around it and then go south, I'm about a half hour going that, I'm about 45 minutes to an hour going that way.
I was also in the boonies. I was down on Shikoku, so I feel
wow.
That's that point. Ouch.
Yikes.
Yep. That's why they bullied her for being half American.
Mm-hmm.
But we should move to the questions, possibly.
Yeah.
Yes, I just want to get everybody's final personal opinions about the movie out of the way. But yeah, when you say it like out in the boonies, it kind of makes sense. Like those kids talking to your host sister were like, "You're not from round here."
Oh. Can I throw in a quick anecdote to stack on top of that to kind of express the severity of how bullshit that is? I'm sorry. I team taught with a woman, full-blooded Japanese. She went to England for 10 years, so it was kind of trippy. When I first met her, she had this really thick British accent, and I was like, oh, this is gonna get weird. But she was full-blooded Japanese, like first name, last name, everything.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That always actually throws me off a bit. I forget that people can learn English from an accent.
Oh yeah, it's trippy. Like, it was cool, don't get me wrong, it was just kind of trippy.
Yeah,
but third year kids, again, I hate my third year kids so much. Here's another example of why. Is because when we were team teaching, and one of these stupid freaking garu, there were two of them. Oh, I hate them. I just want to punch them in the face. They came up to her and said, "Nihonjin janai, you are not Japanese." Yeah. I was enraged at that, because it's like, it's one thing because I'm an overweight white dude coming in here trying to be an authority figure, whatever. If you're not going to listen to me, I don't care. I understand the context. But they did that to her, and she is full-blooded. And it's like, I question people about that. And apparently, if you leave Japan for an indistinct period of time, you lose your quote-unquote Japanese freshness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you're not it anymore. And I'm like, how can you be like that? Sorry.
Yeah,
it's just...
no, I completely, like, that is one of the reasons they bullied my host sister so much. Was because her Japanese mom married an American man. So, clearly, she would be like, well, I'm half Japanese. And they'd be like, no, you're not. You're not Japanese at all. You've got an American last name. You're American now.
Yeah.
I feel you.
It's just so funny because they have got so much Brazilian blood swimming around in their gene pool at this point in time, and they still say that they're a homogeneous society. No, be honest with yourselves. There are Koreans, Chinese, Brazilians. They are everywhere. Get over yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
I want a shirt that says that.
All right. So our final quick thoughts on the movie before we move into the mailbag.
The pacing felt stifled, but it was really good overall.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I still almost cried. I did not cry because I knew what was coming. But I think if I didn't know what was coming, I still would have cried.
Yeah.
Which is effective.
It hit me pretty hard. I loved the different relationships, and the boy with the puffy hair who looks like Mineta is like...
Oh my god, he's the best!
Yeah.
He's my spirit. He's the guy who wants to make the movie in the manga. He's just such a great character. I love all of the characters in this except for Ueno.
Which one's that? Black-haired girl?
Black-haired girl.
Oh, she was...
Yeah, she was
arguably the most relatable.
I was like, why is the group trying so hard to be anything with her? Because she's such... I love the fact that
shows myself out. Oh.
I love the fact that she gets called out by Shoko for getting Baka wrong. And I'm like, just disappear from the movie, please. You're not doing anything for anyone. Just stop it.
Yeah. Oh God. I mean, that is a whole other kettle of fish, and we will probably have some chance to talk about that as we discuss some of the community reactions. So if you guys didn't tune into my
Seasonal.
it was my OP list for all of the KyoAni OPs. I said that we were opening up the mailbag to questions. If you want to send in your own discussion topics next week, that's weeklyweebcast@gmail.com. And yeah, we got some questions and discussion topics in from people who watched the movie in theaters. So we'll go in one by one and go through these and see what they had to say. Patrick said, I want to start off by saying that I love both the movie and manga. It was great in capturing that sense of being a kid, bullying, and trying to make amends with someone you wronged. Plus, the movie definitely had some breathtaking scenery. But it was also initially hard to watch and read. As someone who is often depressed and struggles with day-to-day life, watching Shoya plan his suicide attempt hit real hard. I had to stop it and take some time to build myself to a point where I could continue. But on the flip side, it's also a good message to just hang in there and trust in others. It's both inspirational and hard to sit through, which is a show of how well written it is. I would easily watch it again. Sorry if this is sloppy. It's 5:30 a.m. and I'm about to go to bed, having finished the fall Weebcast. You're a trooper, buddy.
I agree. I 600% agree with this. That I had a very hard time reading it the first time because it's like truly, really upsetting and really hard to read. But that's the point. I think the whole point is that you're supposed to feel sad while you read it. Any thoughts, Mr. Goombah?
I find it interesting that for all of the moe blobs, for all of the most stereotypical anime that exists and continues to exist and will always continue to exist, the stuff that goes down in the history books, the stuff that wins awards, are this. Mm-hmm. Where it's actual people doing actual... this is the thing. From a gaming perspective, for those of you that don't know, my predominant thing is culture and gaming. I dabble in anime from time to time. My biggest complaint with AAA gaming is that it's real dudes with real dude problems.
Mm-hmm.
And that's predominantly why I've had a lot of disdain for the modern gaming era, is because it's always just, here's a guy, he's gonna go do guy things, it's kind of extraordinary, cool, but it's just more humans, you know? And then for anime, my biggest problem has always been, it's cute girls doing cute girl things, period. And maybe it's because of my age, maybe it's because I've been around and in anime since it came over here, but it's so soulless and predictable. But when you actually get real human people involved, this is why I swear again, this is why I say Genshiken is infinitely better than, oh my gosh, I can't even remember the name. What was that? Gamers. People are always like,
we're gonna fight.
Oh yeah, we are gonna, dude. We'll throw down right now. We'll throw down after this. But no, anime is so good when it's about actual people with that kind of issue. You can even put it in a fantastical setting. You could put it in a series like Spirited Away, or if you want to get really weird, like stuff like freaking Cat Returns. You can put the world in a really weird place. But if you show the humanity of people, I think that's where anime really blossoms, and that's really hard to replicate with, ironically, live acting. It's when you make people predictable, in my opinion, when you make bad anime, because there's so much more potential in that. Even something like Gurren Lagann, that's still about people trying to figure themselves out. It's a weird freaking world, but it's still people coming to terms with things. Simon coming to terms on his own understanding of who he is and his place and standing up for himself. Kamina trying to be the big brother figure and showing him...
Kamina trying to get laid, and...
I would argue that. But then spoiler alert, apologies.
10 years later.
10 years later. When Kamina dies, Yoko trying to figure herself out.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yoko trying to get laid.
When Kamina dies, a virgin.
It's just like what makes Silent Voice so good, and why it stands out, and why people are talking about it so much more than like a lot of other homogenized anime, is because it captures the essence of what it is to be human so damn well. And it's I think that's something that bears repeating like every single day in the anime community.
I see almost all of my favorite anime like play to that to some degree or another. Anohana is my favorite movie, or my favorite TV show. And that like absolutely speaks to the emotional state of all of its characters. I think the reason that anime is so good at that when they actually try for it is that, I mean, animation is fundamentally about studying how people move and exaggerating that and making it feel real when it's not real. And the way that people move is inexorably tied to the way that they think and the way that they feel. And animation allows you to draw deeper and more potent emotions out of the scenes that you're working with and the characters that you're working with than you really can in live action without, playing with camera tricks and stuff like that. Because it's more natural for an animated character to do the Hosoda cry, as I call it, the bawling their eyes out, face half melting because of the tears pouring down it.
That's what Oprah Winfrey calls the ugly cry.
The ugly cry. Like, ugly crying can be made beautiful in anime, because you don't have to worry about people's makeup and stuff, for one thing, but also just because the exaggeration of all this, like, liquid pouring out of somebody's face
is what you feel on the inside, really.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you can, like, when somebody's angry, you can stretch their mouth out and, like, widen their eyes.
When you're yelling.
and that, I feel like that connects more visually than just seeing a human being feel the same way, because they can increase the some of the emotional signals and decrease other ones. And that's kind of like, to take a weird left turn into games for a quick sec, that's kind of, I think, a big point of failure for LA Noire, is that they were motion capturing actors, whereas like a more cartoony game might actually get across their emotions and the subtle and more overt side of that more effectively, because they either had to make stuff so obscure that you couldn't really tell what the characters were thinking, or they had to be miming to the point that it was just like goofy. And when you bring that miming style of acting into animation, it just makes more sense, Well,
like I said, games about dudes with dude problems. Again, it's like once the platforming era kind of came to a close, it was all about trying to appeal to that older audience, and it was just everything is gritty, everything is real, everything has to be photogenic to real life, and it's like you're completely deterring the point of it's ironic, because when gaming tries to become as like one-to-one with actual life as possible, it typically goes horribly wrong, but when anime does it, it goes wonderfully right, in my opinion. And that's not to say that there aren't anime that exist that can't be completely off the wall inhuman. I just got done watching one of the best iterations of that kind of anime, freaking Ninja Slayer. Go watch that if you want if you want an Adult Swim ninja theme mind trip. Watch that. But again, I would still argue the fact that anime is at its greatest when it can encapsulate human emotion.
All right, we're gonna move on to the next discussion topic. But yeah, I agree 100%, and I think that particularly whenever it touches on depression, because with depression you can take that motion away, and that really captures the feeling of being stuck in that state. Yeah.
Well, it's also something that, from a Japanese perspective, you can't express. You can't express depression in an open setting, either because it makes things awkward or it makes things difficult for other people. That's why, when I first started watching Akidearest, one of the things that blew me away about her content was putting together the idea that Miku videos that are really, really depressing that talk about suicide are really so popular because it might be the only vehicle in which some of these kids can actually talk about it. So sorry, that's another video idea for later.
Yeah, yes, I agree. It's very hard to express that, and it's very hard to deal with it, and this is a hard watch because of it. Moving on to the next question to the next discussion point.
I'm gonna read this one. It's from Dank Paladin. Dank Paladin. Honestly, one of the best movies I have ever watched. I'd love to share it with friends and acquaintances whenever I get the chance to. The soundtrack was great, especially Lit, and how it corresponded with that last tear-jerking scene in the movie. The animation was very well done, and the story was fantastic. After watching it, I couldn't help but buy all the manga online. Yes, good choice. For real, it is such a good read. That is my comment. It is such a good read.
And may I just interject that if you want to buy all of the manga online, you can go to global.bookwalker.jp and find the entire A Silent Voice manga there for easy reading on your phone, tablet, computer, or whatever other device you might be interested in. And you can use the promo code BASEMENT to get 600 yen off the first manga that you purchase from their ebook store.
Good chill, Jeff.
To continue, thank you for interrupting.
That's why I picked out this email.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. But
for me, Your Name was too fast and rushed to thoroughly enjoy, so A Silent Voice was just a better movie overall. We did already talk about this, so, I mean, we'll touch on it. But, I mean, to each their own. I personally, it's just what kind of style of movie that you like. Like Goombah said, Your Name is very atmospheric versus A Silent Voice, which is very character-focused. Sorry.
Yeah.
Someone sounds like they're upset.
I was just going to quickly... Yeah, I was going to quickly intercut. But you were talking to Goombah, so let's go to Goombah.
Yeah, Jeff.
I was just going to say, I don't think... Okay, I'm going to say a bad thing about Your Name, so everyone get your torches and pitchforks ready. I don't think
right here.
I don't think that Your Name went too fast. I think it had too many holes. Because when you get not only body swapping but also time travel involved, and you don't explain it except for magic-y, just not even magical science, it's just magic. That's what it was. Am I wrong? It's
no, I mean, you're definitely not wrong.
Boy walks in, drinks magical spit sake, is transported into the same planar dimension as this girl at a certain point in time, and it's like, this is a cool. It's a cool relationship story. The body swapping aspect was really good, but then you get time travel mixed into this about halfway through the movie, and it's like, you've lost me, movie. I'm sorry, but it's like, you need to have more cohesion than this.
I don't know. I wasn't super bothered by the jump to time travel. I think it's kind of a weird thing to say that Your Name felt too rushed compared to A Silent Voice, because A Silent Voice had to cut out a lot of story content.
It was actually rushed.
I mean, everyone gets into movies differently. You know?
Yeah, they did a good job making it flow, I think. But Your Name, while the sequence of events over months and years does move pretty quickly, it is built to hit all of those plot points without any other connecting tissue. whereas they had to move a lot around to make a silent voice work. And maybe that works to a silent voice's benefit, because moving that around and carefully choosing what to keep in makes it feel more cohesive. But yeah, I really like the pacing of your name, personally. I have never been somebody who cares a lot about having sci-fi stuff explained to me if it's not the core story idea, if that makes sense. Like if body swapping and time travel are just the prerequisites for the story to happen, and the story is more concerned with what happens as a result of that as opposed to why it happens, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with never learning how Erased works, how Satoru can jump back in time.
And that, Jeffrey, is
why
we're the only ones who like it.
But that's what bugged me. That's what bugged me about Your Name, is because they try to contextualize it as this happens because X. If you just left it out, it would have been fine. It's like, no, it's like freaking Orange. Was that? I can't even remember the name anymore. I've blocked it out of my head so hard.
I have
now.
3 knives in my hand right now.
Right?
Are you?
Yazzy's
like,
favorite.
It's my favorite manga. That is my favorite manga.
But
written.
You didn't have to put science in a. Do not put science in science fiction. Don't do it. Just make it space magic. Just don't tell me there's a black hole in the middle of the ocean, because that physically cannot exist.
Don't say that they dropped it into a wormhole in the Bermuda Triangle, and that was dumb, I will admit, but it was. I'm okay with like little hand waves like that, and to be fair to Your Name, its hand wave is basically God did it.
Yeah. Well, was it God, or was it like the ether? Because that's the film, like with the grandma character, it was like, there is this mysterious thing that exists in all of existence, and it manipulates things in time and space. I'm like, cool, space magic, gotcha. Please leave it at that.
Yeah, it's the red thread of fate, like connecting people and intertwining. It's that's a discussion point, I think, for another podcast, diving into how the time travel in Your Name works. Let's move on to the next discussion. Thank you, Dank Paladin, for Dank question. Alexander D asks, or says, it was a good movie. I felt that the movie was set up to pull me out of it, though. Like the fact that they would not put Shoko, a deaf girl, into a normal class at all. And if they did, it would have made it a point to clearly point out to the class beforehand. The other key point that pulled me out of the movie was the suicide attempt. A, why? B, if you really wanted to, why would you have a festival? Why would you leave a festival in a suspicious way? So I wanted to discuss these questions. And obviously the plot is constructed in a way to hit you in specific and symbolic ways and to surprise you, but these specific instances left me scratching my head. Overall, though, the movie was exceptionally good. So I feel like we can clear up these misconceptions for Alexander.
Can I say something?
Yes, go ahead.
That bugged me the entire movie. I stopped. I went online, and I was like, okay, I know that there are special needs schools in Japan. I know they exist, and lo and behold, they do. And I'm like, okay, there are one of two reasons why Shoko was put in this school in this situation. Because this was a disaster waiting to happen regardless. Either one, her mother was too proud, which I don't buy.
That's what I was going to say. I believe it is.
Yeah.
Okay, well...
Yeah.
Okay. Well, either her mother was too proud to put her in a special needs school, or there was not. They were out in like the countryside-ish kind of area, and there was not a special needs school there. But I mean, that was something that legitimately bothered me, and maybe it's a plot point. Maybe I didn't pay attention close enough because if her mother really was that proud of trying to make her like a part of the quote-unquote regular group, I could get that. I could get behind that idea. But it's like, it bugged, like, it kind of took me, I agree that it kind of took me out of the movie as well, because it's like, for as much as Japan does have issues when it comes to special needs students, there are facilities in place specifically to help with blindness, deafness. In fact, the one handicap that there's kind of a you can kind of do better sort of attitude in Japan is physically disabled people, or rather physically enabled people, or differently abled people. Whether you are
an amputee, or
whether you're an amputee, a quadriplegic, a paraplegic. Like, case in point, I never saw in my life a handicap parking spot. Ever.
They don't have handicap parking in Japan?
No, they have it. It's just I have never in my life seen it. I have seen pictures. I have seen other people's pictures of handicap spots in Japan. But it's like, that's the thing. Japan does not have a lot of handicap parking. And boy, howdy, does that country love stairs. Jazzy, Jazzy, I think you can agree with me. That country is freaking in love with stairs. And I can understand why. Because, again, 80% mountainous landmass. I get it. But
instead of destroying it, they'd rather build around it.
Sure. And there are a lot of, like, more modern buildings. Every single building has an elevator. Straight up.
A great example is those overpasses.
Oh, God. Oh!
I wonder that. I used to actually, like, every single day go over. I had to walk across a couple of those.
Yes.
And every single day I'm like, there's no crosswalk in sight.
Yep. How do you, how? It's like, how? But sorry, I'm getting away from the point that's being made. Yes, I agree. It completely pulled me out because there are blindness and deaf. Japan is very, very well equipped to help the blind and the deaf, straight up.
Yeah, so it is a little weird that she would be sent to
That's why I believe that. I think, like, my opinion on it is that her mom is just straight up too proud. Her mom just wants her daughter to be normal.
Yeah.
And the thing is, she wants the best for her. She wants her to be happy. And she seems to think that her being normal is what will make her happy. So she thinks, I'm going to move her, instead of constantly, putting her somewhere that's going to be helpful to her. She wants her to go to a normal school and blend in by cutting all her hair off.
No. She wants her to have long... Yeah. She wants her to cut off all her hair and look like a boy, so she doesn't get bullied so much.
That's what I mean, to blend. So that's something that I believe was cut out of the...
Yeah, that was cut out of the anime. So in the manga, there's a side chapter where the first time their moms interact is Shoko's there for a haircut.
And the mom insists that they cut all her hair off so that she looks like a boy, so no one will notice her and that she'll stop getting bullied.
Yeah.
So like, that doesn't make sense. Cut all her hair off is gonna make her
a target.
Yeah, exactly. But her mom sees it as make her blend in and make her normal.
Yeah.
So that people will stop targeting her. So she seems to think, if I put her in a normal school with a short haircut, she'll be that nail that is hammered in and does not come out.
Which also explains how she treats her other daughter, because her other daughter, like, dresses like a boy most of the time and is mistaken for a boy. Which
possibly has to do with her trying to push Shoko into being just a normal, like, blendable wallflower. That's I think ultimately what she wants for Shoko, is for Shoko to be the classic wallflower.
Whereas Shoko wants to be pretty and have friends.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's I think the pride thing is a good explanation for that.
That's just my take on it personally. Not from, like, a logical standpoint, but from a
For the second question, the suicide attempt.
I don't really think. Does anyone have an answer for why?
She's depressed.
Depression. Yeah. She feels like a burden.
But yeah, if you really wanted to, why would you leave the festival in a suspicious way?
You're not thinking.
Because
when you're in that situation, you're not thinking.
Yeah.
You're emotional.
It just things react and happen. It's not like it's interesting because of the two suicide attempts in this movie, one was planned, one was relatively sporadic. And what you have to understand is that that's kind of the case with both. You will find people who will plan things like that out because of just what's been going on in their lives, like in
depression, deep-seated depression. Well, you spend a long time thinking about it.
In the male lead's case, it was a matter, like, the vibe that I got was he sold everything that he had. Like, he was trying to make up for the, what was it, 1.2 million yen in hearing aid money?
It was like $11,000 or $17,000.
It was 1.7 million yen.
Yeah, it was it was a lot of money.
About $17,000.
So it was like he needed to right the wrong that he put upon his mother before he took his own life, because he saw his own life as a burden and he just didn't really want to take it. Where Shoko was like, I'm trying, I want to make this work, and it's like, it's finally just crunches in on her, and it's like I just this is what I need to do.
Her existence is making other people she cares about suffer.
Yeah.
And she just needs to end it as fast as possible. Like,
so that other people can be happy.
Like, I think she leaves the festival because it's like the one last thing that she can do to make them happy that she had like in her mind. And she's like, well, that's it. I'm done. I'm checking out.
Yeah. So I think an important thing to remember for Alexander is that just in general, you're not thinking straight. It's you're thinking emotionally instead of logically. So I mean, like, I guess it makes sense then for some people to say, I don't get it. Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the next discussion. Thank you for writing in, Alexander. Unclean Actions for Cheap Currency writes in, I feel like this movie was greatly overshadowed by Your Name since they came out last year, but personally I felt like A Silent Voice had a more heartfelt story to tell. I felt genuinely bad for Shoko trying her best to convey her feelings, but she couldn't because of the disability. The animation was astounding, the characters were funny and likable, and by the end I was bawling my eyes out. I'm glad I noticed this movie before it became popular and that I could express my feelings about it through this email. To Jeff and all the others in this podcast, thank you.
Thank you for writing in, Mr. Unclean Actions for Cheap Currency.
Yeah, I'm more of a fan of filthy acts at an affordable rate. Yeah.
Again, this is another thing we've already touched on, and I agree that I think a lot of people feel A Silent Voice was more heartfelt because it's a little more relatable. It's a lot harder for people to relate to that, to the
time travel.
The time traveling unrequited love.
How could anyone relate? Show me a man who's experienced body swapping with a woman. I mean,
that's what I mean. That's what I mean. Is your name only the only thing your name had for relatability was A, high school students, and B, romance.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean Your Name's a fantasy story. It's like a what if, and that's interesting.
Yeah, and that's like an escapist thing versus A Silent Voice, which is like
it's way real.
I do think that the ending of it, the whole idea of a missed connection and like lost memories of somebody you used to really care about, that can be relatable, and that chance connection, that feeling that you're missing something is relatable, but in like a specific, this story makes sense in the real world, no.
But like A Silent Voice, everybody has experienced the harshness of middle school.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody has experienced either seeing or being bullied. Everybody has experienced feeling like a lonely outcast at one point in their life. So I feel like, in general, A Silent Voice is doing better with fans of relatable things.
Yep. We're moving on to the next discussion. Song writes, Dear Jeff, love your work in the Weebcast when it does come out.
Call it list.
There's a lot of these in here. The quick version is A Silent Voice a good movie and a good adaptation? So, pros, KyoAni animation in scenes and characters, especially Shoko. Cons, in this person's opinion, poor pacing and editing, omission of key manga scenes, no manga comparison, no build-up, so payoff felt poor. Did not capture the essence, spirit, or message of its source material, and unsatisfying ending. And I'm trying to understand why so many fans who have read the manga, too, think this is a good adaptation. While KyoAni shows its chops with spectacular animation regarding Shoko emoting without voice acting, and the general gorgeous look of the film, I thought overall the film was messier than it should have been with regards to plot and pacing. Its initial flashback felt unnecessary for the omission of key moments from the manga and blunted the emotional impact. The dream of what could have been being my personal highlight, so I understand that adaptations are limited in what they can do, but it seems like they left a lot out. Also, without spoilers, the dinner scene with Shoya and his mother was completely mismanaged in my eyes. Instead of being played for drama and reinforcing the message to never do that again, the movie played it for more laughs.
So let's address the first question. Yeah, and then there is a second question at the end.
Yeah.
But I guess the first question is, do we all feel like it's a good adaptation and a good movie? So, good movie?
Yes.
Gooms? Mr. Goombah?
I felt as this is someone who's speaking who has not read the manga. So
but as a good movie, do you think it was a good movie?
It's hard. No, it's hard because I seriously had pacing issues with the movie.
Yeah.
I just did. And in some cases things felt rushed, and in other cases I felt like things lingered too long. So
yep.
So was it a good movie? It was 7. I would give it 7, maybe 8. And I know that's probably going to be harsh for a lot of people, but understanding that it was an adaptation, it makes sense why these things happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think that a big problem I have as a viewer is that I read the manga first, so I'm filling in all these blanks in my head.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to judge if it's a good adaptation. I guess now I can think about it, but as I'm watching it, I'm not able to go, oh, this is a bad adaptation, because in my mind, I'm just filling in the blanks. I don't really see the blanks as much because my mind is like, oh yeah, that's what happened. You just didn't see it. So while I think it is a good movie, I don't think it's a great movie because of its adaptation. Mm-hmm. I think that if it was a series that had more time, like they said, to build up the emotional things, it could have been a great adaptation. But I think it was just a kind of good adaptation.
Yeah. Song also adds, I was confused and left annoyed by the end of the movie, whereas by the end of the manga, I felt like life could get better, and I hope for the characters and myself that it would. And I do agree that the ending of the movie it's obtuse. When he's standing there and he starts crying and all of the X's fall off of everybody's faces. Like, it's a powerful moment, but it doesn't really make good on the romance or anything like that. And there's a lot of... You can tell that even as somebody who hadn't read the manga before I watched the movie, you can absolutely tell that stuff was cut for time, that might have been essential. Like, I'm pretty... Without having finished the manga, I'm pretty sure that the whole reason that these characters come together so frequently is because they're trying to make that movie. Mm-hmm. And without that connecting beat, it doesn't necessarily make that much sense. And then there's that guy who's just there from their class.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the friend?
The friend of
the good
Pigtails girl of the class rep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the friend of the class
That
rep
guy.
who's just there.
That guy.
He's there. Who? Why? What is your purpose? He gets the most upset of anybody about the bullying, but he just sort of shows up, you know?
Yeah,
and
so that's why I think it could have been really successful as a series. But also, who knows if they would have had the
budget and everything. Yeah,
it could have been an orange again.
Well,
that's a big problem. Is I worry that even if it was a series, it still wouldn't have been a good adaptation.
Well, let me ask this question: when has an adaptation ever been as good as the original?
Full Metal Alchemist.
Brotherhood.
Is that universal, or is that opinion based?
I think a lot of people.
That's universal. I'll fight you.
I'm
picking those knives back up. That's universal.
I mean, Blade Runner is just objectively better than Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep.
So one thing I think that is important is that I think that these really feeling-filled series are near impossible to adapt well, or to adapt great. They're okay to adapt, but they will never be great because they do not have the same emotional time that a manga has.
And that's what I mean.
You're reading
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I literally was just gonna say that's I completely support what you just said, is that you cannot recreate the same essence from the original author because you don't have the exact same mindset, you don't have the exact same perspective. Even if you have the person on there, unless they're directly directing it and making and like calling all the shots on every shot, every art asset, everything, it's not going to be as good. It can't.
Yeah, so with a manga, you have the time to appreciate things at your own pace. You have the time to, when there's an emotional scene, you have the time to really like stop and look at it and maybe read the same box a couple times and look at everything that's going on. And with a movie, it's like with a series, with an adaptation, someone else is kind of pulling you along for you. So you don't really have time to let all that sink in, I think.
See, I don't necessarily agree that the original is always going to be better. It's definitely always going to be more true to the vision of the creator, except in the case of Shonen Jump manga, where it's more true to the vision of the creative marketing team that wants to sell comics. Yeah, it's always going to be more true to the vision of the creator, and it will work.
So I'm talking about the emotional part of it.
Yeah,
Like the actual like gut-wrenching
yeah.
feeling will never be as good.
Well, I think that depends. Like I've been reading 20th Century Boys, and 20th Century Boys is a hard manga to adapt because a lot of the emotional context and the mystery elements of it even rely on being able to quickly flip back and check a panel and be like, oh shit, they did that, which you can't really do with anime. But it's all a matter of, I think, changing the context of the story enough and bringing in enough of the director's vision to make it work. Like Erased, I think, is a good example of 9 episodes, I would say, of Tomohiko Ito combining the vision of the manga with his own vision to really sell that emotional impact. I would say that the manga is just not as emotionally impactful in the scenes of, like, Kaio eating breakfast for the first time as the anime is in those same scenes. But it's a matter of changing he's giving me this weird look. It's a matter of changing things to fit the medium, and that's what you always have to do. You can't just make a straight adaptation of the same story, use the manga as a storyboard, and expect it to just work. I was just gonna say, Blade Runner is definitely a better story and just better in general than Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. But it changes a lot. It's a very different story. And that's... You can never do the exact same thing as well as the original work did, if it was good.
But the problem is, when it's emotional, what else can you do? Like in I don't want to keep bringing it back to the greatest manga ever written, but Orange. In Orange, like... I don't know if anybody else in this world has read the manga.
Yeah, so I just talked about 20th Century Boys. You're not going to get away with calling Orange the greatest manga ever written.
You haven't read it. And I hope you never do, because then you'll argue with me about it.
I will.
But here's a better example. Oyasumi Punpun would never work as a series. Ever.
As an anime?
Because there's no other way to tackle the depression of it. Have you ever read Oyasumi Punpun, Goombah?
Nope.
Oh my god, you are missing out. If you like emotional stuff, you are, like, deeply missing out. But, like, Punpun is a great example of something that, no matter what, will never be a good adaptation. Mm-hmm. And I think, just my opinion, is that when it deals with these, like, gut-wrenching things, there's no other way to do it, therefore it will never really be adapted perfectly.
Yeah. I don't know if I agree with that. Because there are plenty of examples of really, really profoundly sad anime that have been adapted from other media. Like Clannad is a great example. Clannad and Clannad After Story.
I'm shrugging.
Gut punching. But those are based on visual novels. Anyway, we gotta keep moving on with this discussion. I guess adaptation is another one of those things we can talk about for a full podcast on its own. So a quick side note before we finish Song's email. Many people and several Anitubers think that it's a good movie, even better than Your Name. I think both films are different genres, though. Romance, drama, slice of life, coming of age, versus romance, comedy. I do think Your Name is better in almost every aspect except character animation. So I was right.
Exact discussion we had.
I've always been... one to understand where people are coming from in differing opinions, but I can't with regards to this movie. Would love a more in-depth discussion to try it, to enjoy it from alternative perspectives.
Well, that's what you've been getting for an hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah, I hope that
Yay.
we've conveyed why we like it. I would probably give it like an 8 or a 9 out of 10, whereas Your Name is a hard 9. So I think I like Your Name a little bit more.
Yeah, I think I am more willing to sit down and rewatch Your Name versus this one. Not that it's bad. If you were to be like, hey, we're going to either watch Your Name or A Silent Voice again, I would probably go for Your Name.
A Silent Voice is more brutal, too. It's a harder watch.
I guess. But for me, it's not like the emotional tiredness. It's just something about the story pulls me in a little more.
Yeah.
Perhaps, again, it's the pacing. I don't know. We could talk about this for another hour and 20 minutes.
We could.
But...
to bring it back to the adaptation, I think the important thing that A Silent Voice does do right is hit the broader emotional points of the manga. Like it hits the 2 suicides, and those really hit you.
Yeah, that does. I will say that when he goes out to the apartment and sees her, like actually that gets you good.
And
that
and the moment when she tells him that she loves him, and she's like, "What about the moon?" That's so.
That is so cute. That is.
Yeah.
That's something that like. How do you dub that?
But yeah, I mean, another thing I really appreciate from just a sound design perspective, very quickly, the fact that she sounds deaf without sounding like how he did it in how he was making fun of her.
Yeah,
because that's a very fine line to walk.
Yeah,
and they did it well.
I think if that this and Gangsta are some of the 2 best series for tackling disabilities, because they really make them realistic, which is a weird thing to say about Gangsta. But yeah.
Yeah. All right, we'll move on to the next email. Hannah J says, on a whole, Silent Voice was a fantastic experience, and I don't mind rewatching it. Overall rating, 10. So maybe this will explain a little bit about why people like it so much. Characters. I love how they portrayed Shoko and her impact on the people around her. Nishimiya tops as one of my favorite characters of all time, and one of the reasons was because she kept a smile on her face and tried to make others happy, even though she was hurting on the inside, and she blamed herself for the conflict between Ishida and his friends, which, honestly speaking, wasn't her fault at all. Her cute expressions made me want to hug her. She was also voiced by Saori Hayami, which also adds a bonus. Not a lot of people would know a deaf person would sound like, what a deaf person would sound like, but she nails it.
Wow, that's interesting to know that the voice actress. That's cool that they got her to study that much.
Yeah. Bonus, she's a goddess.
Google.com, off I go.
Yeah. The movie well established and explained Ishida's mental state and how he struggled with his regrets about and change because of bullying. His path towards redemption was very interesting. The supporting cast had a little more development because in some instances I didn't know why the characters were there. For example, in the bridge scene when Ishida tells Mashiba, "Go away, outsider," I didn't know what kind of interactions they had before the bridge scene, which led me to know absolutely nothing about that character. Animation, since it's by Kyoto Animation, the animation in this movie was outstanding. The small and subtle moments of the characters greatly emphasized that what the character was feeling, thinking at the moment, and made them seem more real. There was a lot of great shots reflecting on how Shoya saw people from his perspective, constantly shifting his gaze from their eyes, and some shots in the POV helped me put myself in his shoes. Every frame was beautiful, and I was entranced by that beauty. Music, the opening song was absolutely brilliant because it matched what Ishida and his friends were doing when they were playing around outside in the beginning, and made me remember what I used to play with my friends outside. The piano gave me a sense of tranquility and serenity, and overall the music was great, and I would rate it as one of the best aspects of the movie. It's one of the best movies I've ever seen in my life. I'm so glad that you enjoyed the movie too. Talking to me, I think.
Wow. There are other people,
I definitely look up to Saori Hayami as a role model, and having something signed by her would be a dream come true for me.
I want to jump into that and
because there's a contest going on.
Yeah.
We do have a manga, and everybody who leaves a comment on this video or sent or on the YouTube version of this podcast or sent a message into the Weebcast will be entered in a drawing to win a signed mini manga of A Silent Voice. But also for Hannah, if you don't win, which will be a shame because you are a big fan. But if you do not win, you can always write, if you live in a larger city at least, or go to a convention in a larger city, American conventions, assuming you live in America, or even in Europe, love Japanese voice actresses and actors. Yeah.
So just email your local convention and let them know. Let them know that she was a major actress in a big movie that actually came to theaters in the U.S., and they might get her. You never know. It's if you are interested in meeting her, I would totally suggest just writing to a local con and letting them know that there's an interest.
I will also say, like, she did a really good job in that
she
role.
did. She must have done a lot of research. I am very interested in like finding out how she did it.
Yeah.
Basically.
I like her act. The scene I was just talking about her saying "ski" and like trying to get that across. It works so well because she manages to sound like somebody who can't speak well, trying to.
Which
is hard to do.
Hear themselves. Yeah, that's the problem. Is that you can't hear yourself. So.
Yeah.
Goombah, do you have any thoughts on the voice acting in it?
I found that aspect to be really interesting because I went to the movie expecting them not to ever have her make any noise whatsoever. But the times where she did speak, I felt it was kind of painful to watch sometimes because of like either sympathy or kind of like I don't know, but it all felt very appropriate. Like when she's,
but I think just to really quick, not to interrupt you, but I think that's the point, is to make it feel like that. I mean, when you're listening to someone who obviously can't hear themselves try to speak, it is kind of like harder to listen to and almost uncomfortable to listen to but it's part of independence, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that was almost really realistic. Sorry to interrupt you, but please continue.
That was it.
That's what you were gonna say.
I'm sorry. But also, I believe that they worked with an association for the deaf in Japan. I believe.
The manga did. The manga was sponsored.
That's what I mean.
by
The original actual story, which means that the movie would have taken that extra step. So it does kind of, in retrospect, make sense that they put that much work in.
Which does make it a little bit more incongruous. Again, that they wouldn't bring up that there are schools for deaf people.
Yeah,
but I mean,
that is weird.
She does go to a school to learn sign language, so there's something there. Anyway, moving on, we got a message from Jay Maines, who says, first, I want to say that you guys got this movie really late. It came out in Japan a whole year ago and was even in little old Australia, my country, way back in March. And when I went to see it, I instantly fell in love. I saw the movie a whopping 3 times before it left cinemas, even though it was only in theaters for 3 weeks, and I had planned to go see it a 4th time too, but one of the friends ditched the day that before, and since I hadn't bought the ticket yet, I just didn't bother. Way to call out your friend on a nationally syndicated podcast, dude. But I seriously love this movie, and it's now not only my favorite movie, but my favorite anime of all time. It's deeply relatable, as some of the shit Shoya, I hope I spelled that right, the main protagonist, has to go through the scene on the bridge when all of his friends break apart and everything they think about each other comes out, is shockingly similar to something that happened to me and my friends in high school, and we didn't recover from it, and I'm not friends with any of those people now. Either way, I know that that's a very personal reason to love this movie, but it's also amazingly crafted and simplistic, but strong soundtrack is bloody amazing. Love that Australian colloquialism. I don't know. You said to send your thoughts about the film in, so here's a bit of why I loved it, even enough to go see it 3 times. And since the pre-orders for the Blu-rays just opened up in Australia, you better believe that I'm getting one. I also need to get a Blu-ray player since I don't have one. I refuse to watch this movie without Blu-ray quality, though.
Good.
Yeah.
But also, good on you for supporting the movie that much. Seeing it 3 times actually helps the movie a lot.
Yeah.
Like, showing that you cared about it enough to pay to see it 3 times, like, thank you. That's good. From like an anime fan's perspective, thank you for paying to go see things.
Yeah, the more
you pay for it, the sooner you'll get it. So.
And the more these things succeed in the West, the better a chance we have of like something like Your Name getting a wide release screening for a long period of time instead of just being adapted by J.J. Abrams.
Stares off into the distance. But just to, I guess, again, we've said this many times throughout this podcast, but you are not the only one, I think, who feels like it may have been a personal thing that pulled you into it. I think that was the whole point of the movie, was for it to be a personal thing that pulled you into it. So
yeah, there is something in this movie, I think, that speaks to almost every kind of experience of high school
and middle school too.
Which does contribute to it feeling a bit rushed, but that's the balancing act. You have anything to chime in, Goombah?
Not really.
Yeah,
all right, we'll move on to the next question.
These we did ask for more comments and questions.
Yeah.
So some of these aren't.
Yeah, we're balancing reading reviews, but with reading questions.
But that's what we wanted. We wanted more of a discussion-based Yeah.
Travis E. asks a very important question, which was, where was Pedro in this movie? He was there for a tie-in scene, but that's it. We need more Pedro.
And then he included a picture of Pedro.
He included
Pedro.jpg.
Yo, Pedro's here holding a condom, like a string of condoms.
He's holding a thing of condoms.
Yeah.
And he's wearing a camo shirt.
Yeah. So he's the big muscly brown guy who was in the
manga?
In the manga and in the opening scene. He's in there in one scene in the opening, yeah. And the father of the adorable little girl.
Yes.
Who, what's her name again? I'm blanking on her name, but she's so cute.
But yeah, we have already touched on this. Where is Pedro? We want to know. We demand answers.
We need a Pedro spin-off movie, I think.
What? Oh my god.
I think a good thing. This would be a good
movie.
point to quickly talk about what did you guys think of the again, blanking on her name, but the little girl, the little his little niece, who is always at home.
Cute.
I mean, that was kind of her role, wasn't it? Is to just show the beauty and innocence of youth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move on to the next question.
Thank you, Travis, for asking the most important
the
question
most important
so far.
question about the movie. Where's Pedro?
Okay, I think I need to read this one.
From Cameron?
Actually, you can go ahead and read it.
Hello, crunchyroll.com/basement at Con Bravo Anime Revolution. And you know exactly who I am. Say hi to Takahata for me. Yells off across the road. Hi, Taka! He lives, yeah. Anyways, here's a question for you. Bit of context for that. He, in a Team 4-star panel, he yelled crunchyroll.com/basement at a con we were both at.
Yes.
Just to mess with Taka. Anyways, here's a quick question for you. Let's say for some stupid reason I decided to try and watch every anime as it's coming out for maybe some podcast that I'd never get out weekly. Maybe I should admit I have a life outside anime.
How dare you?
What are some good ground rules to give when looking at 50 plus anime a season? So this was a general question, but I felt like a good one to include pretty quickly. Don't say watch half and then just leave it to the rest of my vast valley of friends with YouTube channels to pick up the slack.
I mean, that is what I would say. Is to wait until not just Jeff, but any of the YouTubers put out their thing.
Mm-hmm. To narrow it down, but if you want to start a podcast yourself and you're looking to watch everything,
he's just calling you out and asking how to keep up with anime.
Yeah, but I want to answer.
Maybe you'll reflect a bit on yourself.
I want to answer the question seriously, and the best trick is to just like schedule time to watch anime.
Yeah, for real. We even struggle with scheduling time
to keep up with the shows that we want to watch and to watch old shows. There's too much anime. Goombah, you don't watch as much on a daily basis.
No, because again, I'm 32 and a lot of those years are behind me. Yeah, there was a period where it was like, I'm going to literally watch everything that comes out, but it's like, look, let me just put it this way. When you get older and when people say you outgrow things, it's not that you simply don't like them because you're older. When you get older, you start to see patterns. And the patterns will grate on your brain to a point where you hate them. And one of two things will happen. You will either completely stop, in this case, you will either stop watching anime in its entirety, or you're going to be one of the pickiest SOBs, like myself, when it comes to what you watch. Because you've simply been exposed to the same formula over and over and over again, that it makes you want to kill yourself. Metaphorically speaking.
Yeah, this is what I call being old and tired.
Yeah, because I
say it about myself a lot when there's things happening. I'm like, I'm too fucking old and tired.
Because you're literally tired of seeing the same thing. That's what That's what it means when you grow out of something, is that you are so exposed to something that you just don't want to see anymore. Like, if anyone came up to me and was like, culturally analyze this Moe Blob anime, I absolutely will not, because Moe Blob anime completely disgust me. I'm sorry, but they do, because I've seen it. It's not a matter of is it good or bad. I've lived it so much that it's just like, I'm done. Give me something new and different. That's why earlier in this podcast I said go watch Ninja Slayer, because it's the dumbest best thing Trigger has ever made.
It's pretty great. Yeah, Ninja Slayer is 10 out of 10 incredible. So is Inferno Cop, for that matter.
Inferno Cop is a work of art.
Inferno Cop is saved anime. But I will definitely agree that, like, after a certain period of time, you will get to a point where you can watch 5 minutes of an anime and be like, I know exactly how this is going to go. This is what Sengoku Nightblood was like for us. We were like,
Yep.
And like, sometimes you get that wrong. Like, I initially was very put off by Kimono Friends, but that turned out to be great. And sometimes you get it dead right, like in the case of Land of the Lustrous. No, Land of the Lustrous.
Jeff, no. Jeff,
The fans of that are very upset with me, but because I didn't give that, like, I didn't give it enough time because it goes 3 episodes, but I watched 3 more episodes and I was like, yeah, this is a slow ass burn. I'm still watching it. I'm still watching it.
Jeff, you and I need to have 3 hours where we can just debate.
Yeah.
Are you watching Land of the Lustrous and enjoying it?
No, I'm just...
Okay.
No, it's other things that were spoken that I'm not going to repeat here because I don't want death threats at my door.
But yeah, the overall thing is, like, a lot of the time you can see what's coming. Like, if you've seen one Idol Boys anime for about 1 episode, you can tell what's going to happen in all of them forever, and you don't have to watch them. And yeah, it's just a matter of picking stuff to your taste. I would say that if you've got like 3 friends to do a podcast with you, it might be a better idea to divide up duties and then have everybody come back and say like 5 anime that everybody's got to watch, so that everybody gets a taste of the good stuff, but nobody has to watch all of the terrible stuff. But that's just me spitballing ideas for the next time I do a seasonal podcast.
It also depends on what kind of branded podcast you want to be. Do you want to be someone who covers all the popular stuff that everyone's going to joke about is trash? Do you want to cover contemporary anime? Do you want to cover old school anime? It's like, you need to find a specialization, because if you're like, I want to start an anime podcast, that is like step 0.05. Like,
yeah.
To get to step 1, you're going to have to figure out how you want to brand yourself in terms of anime. Like, for me, a lot of the content that I have done and will be doing in the future that is anime related is going to be older stuff. Because my demographic is an older demographic between the ages of, like, 18 and 40, something like that. So, for me to turn around and be like, oh, this is the most popular anime of all time going on right now, and like all of the younger, the age demographic of like 12 to 16 is really into it. That would be the worst thing. I did that with Kakegurui. It was the worst mistake of my life. Not because I thought my video was bad, or I don't really have any negative thoughts on the series itself. It's just my demographic was just not what it's just not what they wanted. So you need to bear in mind, who is it, not only what is it that you're going to want to do on a very specific level, who are you going to try to appeal to? Because that's the bigger question. Sorry, I'm done.
No, that's specializations.
That was a really good summarization, though.
Specialization's important for anything that you do. Like I always tell people when they ask me, how do you get into anime YouTube, is like, don't do what I'm doing. Don't do what anybody else is doing. Find like a channel that does something in the gaming or film space that you really like if you're starved for ideas, and then just do that. Like, I tried to bring in a little bit of every frame of painting, a little bit of game theory, a lot of different things to make my channel feel unique. But it is it's branding is really important, and unique branding is vital. And the other final thing that I will say is, don't push yourself to watch stuff that you don't like. I have to, because my podcast is the seasonal podcast. But yeah,
Getting back onto the silent voice train.
Getting back onto the silent voice train. We've got 2 more comments. One from Natalie T, who says, seriously, such a beautiful and breathtaking movie, and such a touching film. So happy that Australia got a July release. You fucking Australians bragging at us. I really like that it explored deafness and bullying without giving it a political agenda or being judgmental, but rather taking us on an emotional journey through the development of its characters. The whole camera lens focus thing, I don't know what it's called, really adds an extra layer of depth to the already beautiful animation. So it's basically deep focus is what she's talking about. Props to Saori Hayami for doing so well as Shoko. It just seems so authentic whenever she talked. The entire soundtrack and sound design was phenomenal and completely unique. To me, it really transcends words. It that would be a good time for a joke, but I'm proud of you for not making it. It really wouldn't have been as immersive without it, although the end of the movie was a little lackluster and left a few loose ends. It was still nice. Funny thing, the general consensus among my friends was that it was better than Your Name, since it had more of an underlying message and was more emotional. In my opinion, Your Name was where kids cried, and The Silent Voice is where adults cried. I hope you guys agree. Nat, I cried at both. But I am a man baby, so it is hard to differentiate those two.
Interesting that both of the Australians point out the very talented voice actors. Mm-hmm. I mean, nothing wrong with that. I just think it's real interesting that the only two to actually mention who the voice actress is and to point her out was Australians. You darn nice Australians.
I mean, they get to go to Japan more often. It's cheaper for them.
Curses. But it seems the general consensus is that A Silent Voice was more impactful. That seems to be just by the people who wrote in. Because I guess people who liked Your Name are less likely to write in.
Yeah.
People who did not like A Silent Voice are less likely to write in.
That's fair.
Which we should actually advertise a bit more, being like, please, if you didn't like it, I would love to hear your opinion.
Yeah, the counterpoints are really important, too.
Yeah, but it does seem like the general feelings are that it was just a better emotional ride than Your Name.
Yeah, I mean, more relatable for sure. I don't know if I would say better, because Your Name hit me really hard. But, yeah, I would say they're both good. And, yeah, the consensus is definitely in favor of A Silent Voice on these questions. But also
the consensus seems to be that Hayami did an amazing job with the voice acting. So.
Yes! She was definitely a highlight. Any thoughts about that?
Not really. I thought it was pretty succinct.
Yeah. Okay, and then the final question comes from Kenny V, longtime sponsor and cool guy.
Long-time question asker, thank you.
Dear Jeff, Grand Vizier of the Shaluminati Thu. No, this isn't about the Tekkamon Blade Weebcast, which you still owe me. So that's a patron thing, and we are working on watching Tekkamon Blade. It's long. I'm a huge manga fan, but not much of an anime fan. I have this tendency to not watch anime based on existing source material unless I know for certain that either A, it has completely different take on the source material that can stand up on its own, Excel Saga, or B, is universally considered to be far better than said source material, sometimes even by its creators, Trigun, K-On! So I'm wondering whether or not I should read the manga first. I know that it's readily available on Comixology. For comic book geeks, streaming services for comic book geeks, but I can also get it. But can I also get it on Bookwalker as well? What are some of the strengths of the original? Is it a faithful adaptation? How far does the movie go? Does it only cover the first few chapters, or is it an ultra condensed adaptation? And does the manga make me want to baw? Taskete, Jeff Sama, Hail Cobra, and great sign out. Great sign out.
I think we've basically already answered a lot of this. Mm-hmm. Yes, you can get it at Bookwalker with promo code Basement.
You can. I will say that if you have a Crunchyroll subscription, you can also read it on their manga service. Oh. It's one of the few manga that are on that service in its entirety.
So you
I
could
believe.
Also, yeah.
Yeah. So those are both options.
But I think we've kind of already touched on all of these. That if you are not huge on adaptations, read the manga.
Yeah.
The manga is arguably a better story.
It's definitely a more complete story.
Yes, especially if you find yourself being more into manga. If you're saying, "Oh, I don't know if I want to watch the anime. Is the manga good?" Yes. Mm-hmm. You're okay to just read the manga.
Yeah. I would say that this kind of brings to mind a point on the difference in quality of the adaptations, which is just that adaptations, while they may not necessarily capture the emotional arc of the source material the same way, they have the value of adding in a bunch of different artists' perspectives on everything. Like, every single actor brings their own unique take to these characters. The director, who is the director of K-On!, by the way, so that may be a sign that you might want to watch this. The director's vision impacts this. every animator who works on it impacts the emotional context of the film. So I would say that it's worth watching, and maybe worth watching before you read the manga. I don't know. It will spoil parts of the manga for you, obviously.
I think the manga, if you're going to do both, read the manga first.
Okay. And the manga will make you want to cry your eyes out.
Yes, yes, absolutely. If you're someone who can get sucked into manga like that, because there are people who can't. There are people who just can't get that emotionally invested into manga, but if you find you are someone who gets real deep into manga, then you will cry like a baby, and you're welcome.
And that's, I think that basically answers all of those questions. We're going on to our final thoughts of the day. Would we all recommend the movie?
Yes.
Yes?
If you got the 2 hours to blow, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a fun, especially because I know it's already out in the US and done, I think, but if you're in Canada, it is coming, so it's definitely a good, like, get a couple friends and go see it kind of movie.
And from how many people have said specifically about the sound design and music, this is a get a good speaker system at home or watch it in a theater if you can kind of movie. Not just for the visuals, which are beautiful, but for the audio mixing, which is incredible.
Real fast, just before we close up, do you want to go over the terms of that contest one more time?
Yes.
Just to clarify with people.
Okay, so what you want to do to win this contest is you want to leave a comment below on the YouTube video version of this podcast. You want to be subscribed to Basement Escape, the channel that this podcast is on, just so that we can confirm, and we will work on shipping it to basically anywhere, so don't worry about your location. We want this to be one of those contests anybody can enter.
And when will it close?
And the contest is going to close a week from the day that this podcast goes up, so we will announce the winners on the next podcast. If you guys enjoyed hearing Gaijin Goombah speak, you should check out his YouTube channel, Gaijin Goombah. That's convenient. Where he talks about culture and how it relates to video games from different countries, how it relates to anime from different countries. He's got some very interesting videos about anime recently. If you like Dragon Maid, he had a really solid
that was
discussion.
a long time ago. The most recent one I actually did a collab with Joey the Anime Man. Talking.
Yeah, that was just a couple days ago.
Yes.
That was talking about the brilliant lesson that I believe My Hero Academia is teaching to impressionable high school kids in a time where critical thinking and taking risks is all too critical.
That was a great video too. We were watching it and talking about it yesterday, and we were like really blown away by some of the points you brought up.
But also that collab came out of nowhere. We were like, that's cool.
We weren't expecting you guys to do.
He and I have worked together before.
Yeah,
so that part I didn't know personally.
I know we weren't expecting you guys to hit Hiroaka together, because that was like, they were both really interesting videos, and I highly recommend checking out both of those. If only to familiarize yourself with the Anime Man, who should be on one of these podcasts one of these days.
Yes, he should.
But yeah, check out Goombah's stuff, because in general he's been doing a lot of really interesting stuff about anime lately, and he's got a really interesting perspective on the culture. And
it's okay, I guess.
Don't be a jerk.
I'm joking.
He also does videos for Game Theory if you want to see more of his stuff there.
Yep.
And you follow him on Twitter at Gaijin Goombah. Thanks for coming aboard, dude.
Yeah. Personally, I don't associate with anyone of the Goomba type.
Oh, well, that's just you're just racist.
Are you a Koopa girl?
I am. I happen to be a little prejudiced against the Goomba race. No, I'm kidding.
The oppression of the Goomba race.
You better be careful.
By
My
the
most
Koopas
popular video I've ever made was talking about how Goombas were poorly represented in gaming.
Hashtag Goomba rights.
I mean, it's true. It's true. They rarely even get like spots in Mario Party and Mario sports games.
That's why Bowser's Minions was an absolute blast, and why Sonic. I almost said Sonic Odyssey. I've had Sonic on my brain a lot lately.
Sonic Odyssey.
But no, playing through Mario Odyssey, Goombas have a much larger role than Koopas do, which is very, very interesting in that game.
And being able to become Mario Goomba in a horrifying.
If you want, okay. I hate to do another self-promotion, but I'll just say it really fast.
Go for it.
I do have a Twitch, which is also Gaijin Goombah. Just last night, we got done with a particular kingdom that was very weeb-tastic, and that was probably the most entertaining live 3 hours of my life in the last couple of years. So go check that out.
We will have to go check that out too, because we haven't started playing yet.
Yeah, we're behind on our
Well,
Mario
get ready
Galaxy.
for a lot of spoilers then, because I literally culturally break down every single aspect of that particular stage.
Well, sir, you
That's
keep
cool.
you keep fighting that good Goomba right fight.
Bet I will.
Fight for those little Goombas.
Yeah, so if you support Goomba rights, be sure to subscribe to Gaijin Goombah.
Contact your local
Let them know
senator
that
in the
Koopas
Mushroom
fucking
Kingdom.
suck.
And yeah, thank you for tuning in. We will catch you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to send your questions to weeklyweebcast@gmail.com. We are Jeff Thu Professional Shitbag.
Yazzie/10 professional best girl.
And
Gaijin Goombah cultural analyzer.
signing out from various places around the internet. And last but not least, in celebration of Twitch's Yu-Gi-Oh! Stream, next week we're going to be talking about the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, so if you want to be part of next week's Weebcast, send in your comments and questions related to Yu-Gi-Oh! To weeklyweebcast@gmail.com. I'll see you guys next week.